From time to time, I get complaints from people asking why I no longer unbox the shoes on camera anymore. So to please those people, here's my unboxing of the Copa 18.1. What's going on, guys? Josh from soccerreviewsforyou.com, bringing you my review plus on-feet video of the brand new Copa 18.1 in the launch Skystalker pack colorway, a shoe that is extra important for Adidas right now because this is really their only modern leather boot on option. They've made some interesting changes coming from the previous generation, and of course the question everybody wants to know, is it as good as the Nike Tiempo Legend 7, which is my personal favorite boot on the market right now? All of those questions will be answered in this video, so if you want to learn more about these, please stick around. And if you're interested in a pair for yourself, I'll leave a little pop-up on screen, or you can click the first link down below. That'll take you to the review page on my website, where you'll find buy it now links with exclusive SR4U coupon codes, where you'll be able to pick these up below their normal $200 retail price. The main reason why you would buy a Copa 18.1 is for the kangaroo leather upper and really the modern aesthetic of the shoe. If you really wanted the best leather option from the Adidas brand, I still think that is the Copa Mundial, but the feel and experience of that shoe is entirely different from the Copa 18.1. They almost shouldn't be compared. What you'll notice is that all the changes coming from the Copa 17.1 are in the upper. The sole plate and stud pattern remains the same. More on that in just a second. The most noticeable difference though is going to be in the forefoot. The entire upper, everything you see is solid white, is kangaroo leather, but the forefoot no longer has any stitching. Instead, you're going to find an internal support frame, which we've seen most recently from this shoe right here, the Adidas Ace 17.1 leather. Obviously this being a different color, but it has kangaroo leather at the front, a very thin kangaroo leather with an internal support cage. Slightly different pattern, and you'll notice that the pattern for the support cage here is exactly the same as the stitching pattern originally found on the previous generation Copa 17.1, which is a really interesting way of doing things. And I think the roundness and general shape of this maintains the kind of old school traditional look that a Copa named shoe should have to a certain extent. So visually, I think it looks good. And in terms of overall feel, it's definitely more effective in terms of securing your forefoot than what you'd find from the previous generation Copa 17.1. But the big difference for me is actually going to be the thickness of the leather. This is about half the thickness of the Copa 17.1 and really has a more flat, fairly thin sensation. If I would compare it to any other leather shoe out there right now, it would be something like the Mizuno Rebula, which is not a bad comparison. I'll say that I think the leather on the Rebula is much nicer quality than what you get here on the Copa 18.1, but for the most part, it has that softness on foot that you would expect from a premium kangaroo leather upper. It's just not gonna have an overly padded touch on the ball. It's on the thinner side, which I think a lot of people in 2017 are actually looking for from pretty much any shoe, leather or not. So I don't think that's a bad thing whatsoever. I do like the fact that the majority of the upper is kangaroo leather, including the midfoot on either side. Still not crazy about that stitch point right there, which is maintained from the previous generation, but because it is soft leather, it's not particularly noticeable. And as a whole, I think they've made some slight tweaks to the upper that make for a better experience overall in regards to the leather portion. The other big change coming from the Copa 17.1, which I think is a major improvement, is the compression fit tongue, which bears the exact same name, but feels completely different. The shoe now features what is more of a one-piece construction. Obviously, it transitions from leather to this elasticated synthetic material running through the middle, but it no longer actually wraps internally on the inside of the shoe. On the Copa 17.1, the tongue was not actually sealed on either side of the leather. It was an internal sleeve that you had to slide your foot into, and because of how thin the material was, it would bunch up on you and it'd just be a bit of a pain in terms of actually putting them on. You'd have to adjust them, reach down the edges, pull it tight so it didn't have all these creases on the inside that were actually uncomfortable once you pulled the laces tight if you never corrected it in the first place. So the fact that this is now a one-piece construction, I think actually works much nicer. I wish this would have been something perhaps a little bit more padded rather than being such a thin material versus the leather that you'll find across the rest of the foot, but it really isn't all that noticeable when you're actually playing in the shoes. And because the enclosure for your foot is now one piece, it doesn't actually have a physical tongue or the sides can't open up anymore, it now uses a dual lace hole setup rather than a single lace hole setup, which I actually really like, because this allows for the laces to be locked a little bit more securely once you pull the laces tight, which only enhances the overall responsiveness of the shoe. So from a visual as well as a comfort and responsive standpoint, I think this new design works a lot better. They have also maintained this fold over tongue or this extension piece, whatever you want to call it. It's got Adidas branding on either side, and technically you can kind of fold it forward like this, but it's extremely thin, and as you can see, it just kind of bounces back into shape because it is fully elasticated. So you're gonna have to live with playing with this tongue kind of sticking up the front of your leg like this, which I don't love the look of. In terms of feel, you don't really notice it because it is so flimsy and thin, but I just wish it wasn't there. It's a very unnecessary element that I wish they would have got rid of, but you can't have everything, I guess. Moving on to the heel area, they have maintained a low cut construction, and basically the difference here is that they've taken a lot of the bulk out of the lining material. Not to say that I didn't like the liner on the Copa 17.1, but now that I've actually had a chance to try this, the 18.1, with the new kind of changes that they've made, this actually feels a lot better and fits closer to your foot in general. It just feels less bulky. So the internal heel liner is a nice smooth synthetic suede, and like the Copa 17.1, it does have these little bumps on either side of the liner. They're a little bit difficult for me to show you guys, but it's just extra padding, although it's not nearly as thick as what you got on the 17.1. So it locks your heel in place nicely, it feels very comfortable, but there's not unnecessary padding in there. You're also gonna find that the insole is fully removable, and it remains pretty much identical to the 17.1, except that now it says 18.1. So it's got a nice synthetic suede lining on top, and it's made from a single layer of this yellow kind of ortholite style foam, relatively thin, but it does get the job done. The sole plate and stud pattern is identical. They didn't change a thing. So it's still the same sprint frame with the built-in external heel counter that was originally taken from the Ace 17, specifically the Ace 17.1, which was current at the time of the Copa 17.1 coming out. But now this sole plate and stud pattern is exclusive to the Copa 18.1, which is kind of interesting. And it's a relatively thin sole plate. It's got decent flexibility to it. It's kind of the closest thing we have left to what was originally found on some of those older F50 Adi Zeros when they first introduced the sprint frame. So if you like that feel, that's kind of what this has on offer. And as far as the stud pattern is concerned, it's all conical studs, and it is also technically FG-AG. It performs well. I mean, all the Adidas stud patterns, because the layout doesn't really change, they all perform very, very similarly. This one has, I guess, the most freedom to twist and pivot when your foot is planted because the studs are perfectly round, but it also has decently aggressive traction as well, if that's something that you're after. It's also pretty nice that you can actually use this shoe. The sole plate and the stud pattern is suitable for use on firm natural grass as well as artificial grass playing surfaces. So if you only want to buy one pair of shoes to wear on artificial and natural grass, then you can get away with it with the Copa 18.1, or really any of the Adidas models for that matter. In terms of weight, the Copa 18.1 is actually very, very light. In a size 9 US, they weigh in at right around 7.3, 7.4 ounces, which in comparison to the Copa 17.1, it's about the same. The weight hasn't really changed, but as a whole, it's actually one of the lightest top-end models currently on offer from the Adidas brand, which you probably wouldn't expect given that it does have kind of a more old school design and uses kangaroo leather rather than some kind of lightweight synthetic. But it's very light, it offers that soft leather feel on feet, and if that's something that you're looking for, you're probably gonna like the Copa 18.1. Aesthetically, I think the Copa 18.1 looks pretty good, although they really didn't change much coming from the previous generation. You're gonna notice that it has the internal support cage versus the stitching, which makes it look a little bit more modern. You still have the stripes on either side, the laces still run through the middle. It has that kind of goofy looking tongue. You're gonna find the Adidas logo on the back, and they changed up the pattern on the base of the sprint frame, which I actually preferred the pattern on the 17.1 just because it looked a little more old school, but this looks perfectly fine as well. The Skystalker pack colorway also looks really good in my opinion. White, black with a hint of gold, always a classic color combo, and I think they just look good in general. As far as this material is concerned, that's the one aspect that I don't love the look of. You can see it's like almost like a worn out sweatpants type material. It's a black base with these little white kind of fuzzy bits hanging off. It's kind of cheap in my opinion. I'm not sure why they went with that type of a finish. I guess it kind of fits the old school theme a little bit, but I just found it to be a little bit weird in general. Let me know your opinion on that. And also I did notice that some of the online retailers show a version of the shoe that looks like this, where the black at the heel is actually the reverse. So it's white with the little black fuzzy bits. Those are actually pre-production variations of this particular shoe. The production version is what you're seeing right here in my hand. So if you order a pair, regardless of what's pictured, this is how they will look. It'll be black with the white fuzzy bits as opposed to the opposite of this. So just keep that in mind if you were wondering about why there's a difference between those pairs and the pairs that I am showing. Other than that though, guys, I'd be really curious to hear your opinions. What do you think of the look of the Copa 18.1? Do you love it? Do you hate it? Why or why not? In this colorway, I happen to think they look really, really good. As you can see, I swapped out the stock white laces for some black and white speckled SR4U replacement laces, where the black and white speckles pretty much match perfectly what's going on through this kind of sweatpants type material running through the middle of the shoe, and just the overall black and white theme of the colorway in general. So if you are interested in a pair of SR4U replacement laces for yourself, the website to go to is www.sr4ulaces.com. There'll be a little pop-up on screen, as well as a link down below in the description. So if you're interested in a pair, be sure to go ahead and check that out. On feet, the Copa 18.1 is a very comfortable shoe out of the box. There's really not going to be any break-in time required, although because it is a kangaroo leather upper, it's going to soften up and form to the shape of your feet as you break them in. The heel to me is one of the big differences that you notice immediately coming from the Copa 17.1, in that there's just less material and less bulk back there, which just makes them feel more close to your foot in terms of how they fit overall, which is not a bad thing at all. Lockdown through the midfoot is solid. You can definitely tell that because of the dual lace hole system, there's just a more locked in sensation period because the laces aren't able to move as easily as if it were just a single lace hole setup. And in the forefoot area, the leather is soft. You don't really feel the internal structure until you start running around and moving more quickly, at which point it is definitely evident that there is more added structure than what simple stitching would normally just provide with a leather upper. So overall, very, very comfortable, as you would expect from this style of shoe. As far as the width is concerned, they've got a decent amount of width to them. I would say that even with a one-piece upper, these are gonna be suitable for just about anybody. Even if you do have wider feet, again, the leather's going to stretch, so you don't have to worry about that too much after a few hours of wear time. And as far as the sizing is concerned, I'm wearing my usual size 9 US here, and fit and length is perfect. So if you are looking to order a pair, I would strongly recommend going true to size in order to achieve the best possible fit. To sum up the Copa 18.1, I think it's a definite improvement over the model that it replaces. I like the fact that they went with an internal support cage. It does feel more responsive because of that. I like the dual lace hole setup through the middle as well. I think that helps the lockdown of the shoe. Less bulk in the heel, I think, is good as well. And the sprint frame sole plate and stud pattern is well proven at this point and works quite well with everything they've done to the upper. Plus, the improvement of the compression fit sock, now just being a one-piece construction as opposed to being this internal sleeve, I think is much better as well. I don't love the fact that it has this flap tongue, and I personally would like to see the leather be a little bit thicker to offer a more padded touch on the ball, but as a whole, given how light the shoe is as well, I think it's a really, really solid option if you're looking for something that has that old school feel to a certain extent, but at the same time doesn't lack modern innovation. As to whether or not I prefer it over the Nike Tiempo Legend 7, which is very similar in terms of a lot of the features that these two shoes have, I just think the Legend 7 as a whole is a much better package. It's more responsive. It's pretty much just as light. I find it to be a little bit more comfortable, and I prefer the way that that shoe fits in general. And I also prefer the stud pattern on that shoe. So if I'm comparing the two, I do prefer the Legend 7, but I definitely think that if you like what the Copa 18.1 has on offer, there really isn't anything else like it currently available, and I can strongly recommend them. Anyways, guys, that is it for my review of the Copa 18.1. Again, if you're interested in a pair for yourself, you can click the first link down below. That'll take you to the review page on my website, where you'll find buy it now links with exclusive SR4U coupon codes, where you'll be able to pick these up below their normal $200 retail price. If you have any questions, as always, leave them down below in the comments, and I'll do my best to get an answer out to you as soon as I possibly can. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to support it with a like. Subscribe if you haven't already for daily videos on all the latest and greatest soccer gear. You can find all my social media information linked in the description as well. And other than that, guys, hope you enjoyed the video, and as always, thanks for watching.